Building a sustainable economy is not only a concern for policymakers, but it's also, more importantly, for business and all citizens. It is also imperative if we want to protect the gains in development that have been made in the last decades. At the World Bank Group, for the sustainable development practice, we have three major strategic objectives when we talk about sustainable developments. One is really to meet the basic needs of all peoples in our member countries. We're talking about basic needs in education, in health, in access to roads, to water, electricity, etc. Talk about water supply and sanitation. As we speak today, we have over 600 million people have no access to safe drinking water, and over 2 billion people have no access to safe sanitation. So this is a tremendous challenge in front of us. Second, we also want to ensure that there will be sustainability in resource reflow in our planet. For instance, in our drive for urbanization, for meeting the great need of the agriculture, every country, many countries in the world use a lot of groundwaters, but we want to make sure these groundwater are recharged and will not be impacted in the future. And third is basically we want to promote a long-term perspective in planning investments to ensure that the investment today will take into account of the changing demographics, climate, and technology that will impact on the futures. Development failures often lead to extremism, violence, and even war, as we see. We see early warning signs when public and private institutions lose their broad legitimacy, and we see the warning sign when citizens themselves feel excluded from economic gains, which is why this is make it really more important that we have to achieve sustainable development. Yet, in this challenge, we face multiple risks that we face in sustainable development. This includes climate change, pandemics, violence spread across national borders. There are also substantial gaps in access to investment in human capital, like health trainings and healthcare. These are creating additional strain on the political institution. All these challenges are global in nature, and meaning international cooperation at all levels is required to address them. If these challenges are not enough, today as we speak, we are talking about over 20 million people, including 1.5 million children. Some of them in Arab states are facing famines. We're talking about Nigeria, talking about South Sudan, Yemen, and Somalia. And this famine are caused by multiple drivers, including conflicts, civil insecurity, poor governance, and large-scale underdevelopments, and water insecurities. There are also credible risks of famine in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Sudan, with drought conditions extending also to Uganda and Tanzania. And this challenge also easily cross borders, as we know. For example, food insecurity in Somalia and famine in South Sudan are accelerating the flow of refugees into poor countries like Ethiopia. The UN is already calling this as the worst humanitarian crisis since 1945. It is clear short-term life-saving support has to be accompanied by a long-term development response that assists countries to develop better coping mechanisms. The World Bank Group is engaging with countries to protect the poor and the vulnerable and to ensure inclusive, accountable service delivery with a strong private sector that can create jobs and opportunities. We also believe that it is important to improve the quality of development and growth. We're talking about equality between men and women, between urban and rural population, and between nations. Official development assistance finance, even combined with government resources, will never be enough to meet the global challenge we face. Going forward, the core focus will be on leveraging and mobilizing global funds, especially from private sector institutional investors, through innovative mechanisms that will meet the extraordinary financing need of the region. In the past, we tried to address this long-term development challenge through the framework of Millennium Development Goals, and progress has been made, but these are mixed. In 2015, the global community came together to frame the Sustainable Development Goals, the so-called SDGs, which are comprehensive and apply to all nations and not just the developing countries. The SDGs are interconnected and interdependent. SDGs acknowledge that we cannot look at poverty, health, and education as a standalone investment. Each of these will require substantial financial support and robust participation from the private sector. It will require good data and savvy delivery to implementing this ambitious plan. The World Bank Group is doing its part through a variety of mechanisms to better sequence our intervention. We have recently developed something called cascade approach to investment decision-making to encourage access to commercial finance while leveraging and pursuing the scarce public sector resources for critical public investments. The idea is that basically if commercial financing is available, we'll use that as a preferred course. If it is absent, we'll try to address market failure. And if this effort is insufficient, we'll utilize our risk instruments and our own matching capital to try to crowd in private investments. And finally, if none of this is available, we will, of course, use our public and concessional financing to support the need. It is important to note the country's own domestic resources are the largest source of funds available for countries to meet their financing for developments. And this new approach to finance is absolutely necessary if we are going to raise sufficient resources to achieve the ambitious SDGs. I'm particularly pleased to be here today representing the World Bank Group, but also for our water global practice, because we strongly believe water is at the center of sustainable development agendas. Not only is there a dedicated goal for water in SDG, this is actually SDG 6, managing water will also be critical to achieve some 15 of the 17 sustainable development goals. To name just a few, abundant water in supply is vital to produce food and will be essential to attain SDG 2 on food security. Clean and safe water and sanitation systems are also necessary for health as called for by SDG 3. And water is needed to power industry and create new jobs as identified in SDG 7 and 8. Adequate and safe water is important to nourish the planet's life-sustaining ecosystem as identified in SDG 13, 14, and 15. So, whether it's famine, climate change, conflict, pandemic, successfully addressing this global challenge will require working in partnership within and between nations and with international organizations and with private sector and civil societies. And this week ahead of us, we present an opportunity for start building this partnership and collaboration and ensure we move together towards these goals. I certainly hope that we can make the most out of these important events, actively joining the discussion and be active for the change ahead of us for the attaining the sustainable developments in every area that we work. I'm very honored to participate the launch of this week on behalf of the World Bank Group. Thank you very much.